This is the J. Scott Outdoors podcast on Western big game hunting and fishing, brought to you by GoHunt.com Insider. Research faster, hunt more. Go to GoHunt.com/insider and join today. I'm your host, Jay Scott, and I live and breathe hunting and fishing, spending half the year in the field experiencing God's creation. I hope you'll enjoy hearing about our adventures. Guys, welcome to the J. Scott Outdoors podcast. Today we're going to talk with Jed Larson of A3 Trophy Hunts. And Jed has been fortunate to follow a big bull for a couple of years, and it was just harvested by Philip Barrett, the auction hunter. And it's a beautiful bull. If you haven't seen it, it's all over Instagram, Facebook, social media. A3 Trophy Hunts guided for this bull, and it's a fantastic bull. Interesting, this morning on the Boone and Crockett website, I saw something about governor's tags, and I wanted to read it to you. It's called Governor's Tags, Ethics vs. Conservation Funding. Ever more controversial governor's tags have a new official endorsement, as well as a caution from the Boone and Crockett Club. In a new position statement, the organization founded by Theodore Roosevelt supports the modern concept of exclusive big game hunting permits sold at auctions to help fund conservation. The inordinate amount of money these permits bring is an acceptable buoy for state, provincial, and tribal wildlife agencies with inadequate budgets, the club says. But Boone and Crockett also expressed concern about the relaxed ethical standards and anything goes perceptions that seem to follow some of these actual hunts. Every year we hear from more and more hunters who are disheartened by tag hunts, and frankly some of their criticisms are justified, said Boone and Crockett Club President Maury Stevens. He added, "The cost usually required to buy a governor's tag is, essentially, an extra conservation tax on the wealthy, but volunteering to pay it shouldn't come with privileges that allow a person to skip the fair chase standards that made hunting a cherished American tradition. Buyers and their guides still have a duty, like everyone else, to keep our sporting lifestyle acceptable in the eyes of the public. Boone and Crockett will continue to accept governor's tag trophies into its records program as long as the hunt was conducted under legal, ethical tenets. After all, the animals taken are a part of success story of modern habitat and game management programs, and tracking that success is why the club keeps records in the first place. But the club also understands that paying for conservation isn't getting any cheaper, and governor's tags allow an agency to usually collect in the range of $10,000 to $400,000 for the opportunity to hunt a single animal. Those revenues translate to benefits for all species and citizens. Better communication and more transparency from participating agencies, the highest ethical conduct from governor's tag hunters and outfitters, and a deeper understanding from critics about today's urgent conservation needs would improve the effectiveness and sustainability of these programs, the club says. They also have a thing that says to read more about the club's full position on the statement, click here. And this is on the Boone and Crockett website. And then there's a portion there, I believe it's Facebook, where everybody's weighing in on the topic. And there's half for and half against. And I just thought I would read that to you guys before we hear this episode with Jed Larson. I've known Jed for a long time, and he loves elk, and he's very good at what he does. And I'm proud of these guys for finding this big, beautiful bull, real heavy, massive bull. And guys, I want to thank you, my listeners, for tuning in and making this podcast a success, getting exponential growth on this podcast every day, and I want to thank you guys, the listeners. If you have any questions or comments, I'd love to hear from you. I love getting emails every day from you guys. My email is jscottoutdoors jscott@gmail.com. Please follow along on Instagram at jscottoutdoors, on the J Scott Outdoors Facebook page, J Scott Outdoors YouTube channel, and just appreciate all of your support, guys. Appreciate you guys telling your friends. Appreciate you guys tagging friends on my Facebook post that don't know about the J Scott Outdoors podcast, and really appreciate the support. Speaking of support, I want to thank the sponsors, GoHunt.com, Insider, for their support. They have renewed their sponsorship of the podcast, which I'm proud of, and it's been great working with them. And we're going to have some episodes from the guys at GoHunt.com talking about specific hunts and talking about things that they have going on. So I look forward to those. Guys, I also wanted to tell you about the GoHunt.com Insider. Get everything you need in one spot. Find and plan your hunts more effectively than ever. With the Go Hunt Insider, you get complete state coverage. See detailed information for every unit, every species, every hunt. Interactive maps. Quickly find hunts that meet your exact search criteria and explore them easily. Strategy articles. Learn new things and find hidden opportunities with exclusive weekly articles. Species breakdowns. Top trophy units are hiding in plain sight. Find them with our statistics and historical data. Guys, you can get a $50 KUIU gift card by signing up and joining GoHunt.com Insider. All you have to do is go to GoHunt.com/insider, click the blue Join Now button, and use the promo code JScott at checkout, and you will automatically receive a $50 KUIU gift certificate. They will send it to you electronically, and you will be able to buy some KUIU gear. At the start of this episode, I have a small clip here from Jason Hairston of KUIU talking about the Peloton gear with KUIU, and he explains it. It's a short clip, but he goes into detail about the Peloton, and I've been using Peloton this summer on a lot of my fishing expeditions, going out early in the mornings, wearing some of the different pieces of Peloton, and I gotta say I really like the feel of this synthetic. I'm going to be putting it to the test this fall and look forward to using it. I've got some great feedback from some of my friends that are using it as well, so great opportunity to sign up for GoHunt.com Insider, get a $50 KUIU gift card, and I also want to thank Deadeye Outfitters for their support of the podcast and sponsorship of the podcast. Deadeye Outfitters makes quality t-shirts, sweatshirts, and hats designed with hunters in mind. Deadeye Outfitters has the only license for creating Boone and Crockett apparel. Use the JScott promo code and receive 10% discount on all purchases at deadeyeoutfitters.com. Guys, this is going to be a great episode. Jed Larson is a wealth of knowledge here. Let's dive right into the episode. First, you're going to hear from Jason with KUIU, and then we'll go right into the episode. Thanks for your support.
Peloton is another PrimeFlex innovation by Toray. And in part of knitting the Alpine product, they've been researching, developing a whole knit program using PrimeFlex yarn. And I've been looking at synthetic knits for a long time. I've worked with Polartec in the past, and until Toray came out with the PrimeFlex package of knits, I hadn't found anything that really rivaled Polartec, and hadn't found a reason to get into synthetics and get away from merino wool and have another option than merino wool until they came out with the products, the fabric products and technologies that we're using in Peloton. And we have three different fabric weights in Peloton. We have the 130, the 200, and the 240. Like our merino product line, the numbers determine the fabric weights. So you're going to put the 130 as a next to skin type of piece. And this fabric's got it's 100% polyester. It uses the PrimeFlex yarn, so there's absolutely no elastic in it. It's got a really soft, nice hand feel to it. This fabric is really durable. It dries ridiculously fast because there is no elastic. And it's got the high-grade PrimeFlex yarn, so it's just got a great feel. It wears really, really well and dries really fast. And I'll use a synthetic against my skin on shorter hunts that may have just a lot of moisture in the air. When I was down hunting New Zealand a couple years ago, I noticed that all of our guides were wearing synthetics in the country that produces all the merino wool, and I asked them why. And in that country down there, in their fall, which is our spring, there's just a lot of fog and moisture in the air, and their wool just never has a chance to dry out. So against their skin, they're running all synthetics, which got me interested in putting together a synthetic line for Kuiu. And until these fabrics came out from Toray, I hadn't found something that I really trusted to put next to my skin besides merino wool. And this is a great option. If you don't like wool, you don't like how fragile it can be, or you want something more durable that dries faster, this is going to be a great choice against your skin. It comes in a long sleeve and a short sleeve tee, and also a bottom as well. And we're going to have headwear and neck gaiters in the future that will come out later this year. And then the next fabric weight up is our 200, and it's the product I'm wearing here today. It's going to come in a quarter zip, in a zip tee, and also in a hoodie. And I love this hood design on this shirt. You just pull it up, kind of substitutes the need for a beanie. It's going to give you good ear protection, obviously give you good concealment, and if you're sitting and glassing, it's going to give you wind protection in the back of your neck. So you can get this in a zip tee or in a hoodie. And what I love about this fabric is the jersey face is going to give you some abrasion resistance. It's got a brushed back to it, so you get nice soft fleece on the inside. And it's got a very similar feel to a power stretch that a lot of you guys are familiar with, but it's a little bit more durable on the face and doesn't tend to catch burrs and is better against thorns and abrasion than like a power stretch type of fabric. And again, it's 100% polyester, dries very, very fast. And something to look at when you're looking at these mid-weight knits is how much elastic is mixed in with these polyesters. A lot of mid layers that are out there in the market have a lot of elastic. It's something you want to avoid because of how much moisture they'll pick up. And then, probably maybe my favorite fabric in this line is the 240, and it's a pretty unique knit in how it's constructed. And it's a 2-layer knit fabric. So we've got a micro fleece on the inside, and then it's bonded to we call it a grid knit on the outside. It's going to give you abrasion resistance. You can probably see the texture of this fabric on camera. And then by construction, it creates wind resistance. So there's not a membrane that's going to block the wind, but by construction, it's going to give you wind resistance, which is important. So we're not going to get any breathability restriction, but we're going to get wind resistance by construction of this fabric. It stretches really, really well. And what I found in testing this, it wears like a soft shell, but it's it weighs a lot less, and it's a lot less cumbersome to wear. You can wear it closer to your body. It stretches and moves with you. And it's going to give you a lot of warmth. And over the top of the 130 and the 210, and you put the 240, it's a great layering package. It's going to weigh less than like a merino 145, a 210, and then our soft shell jacket. So if you're looking for something that's a little lighter and a little more streamlined, this is a great way to go. It's got built-in thumb cuffs. It's got 2 hand pockets, and it's a full front zip. This also comes in a hoodie as well, and lets us have another option in our layering system. And I think what I like about synthetics is how light they are for how warm they are and how quickly they'll dry. One of the downsides for me on wool is because they're hydrophilic, wool being hydrophilic in nature, it's going to pull moisture into that fabric, but then is going to evaporate. So those fabrics have a tendency to hold a lot of moisture and can get heavy, and if you're in really wet environments, just have a long drying time, and sometimes you can't get them dry. And so in those types of trips, synthetics are an absolutely great option. Synthetics happen to cost a little bit less, and within kind of our range of products, I think have a great fit in expanding the range of our layering system and fitting into the different products we make.
Welcome to the J. Scott Outdoors podcast. Today we've got a really cool episode. I've got friend Jed Larson of A3 Trophy Hunts. Jed and I have known each other for some time, and Jed has been guiding Arizona elk for quite a while, and I really admire the videos that he takes, and he's a world-class archer and has shot archery for a long, long time and is very knowledgeable in the arena of archery, and I admire his videos and all of the content that he puts out on his YouTube channel and website and what have you. Jed had the fortune here in the last couple of weeks to find and locate and stay on a really nice bull, a big, giant, beautiful, typical 6x6 bull. And Philip Barrett, client of A3 Trophy Hunts, was able to harvest that bull. And today we're going to talk to him about his love for elk hunting and videoing bulls and guiding different elk hunters. And then, of course, talk about the big 6x6 and the trials and tribulations that he went through trying to find, relocate, and stay on that bull for several years. Jed, how are you doing?
Hey, having a great day, Jay. Thank you.
Yeah, I've been wanting to have you on the podcast here, and I think the listeners are going to really enjoy getting to hear your passion for elk hunting. Jed, tell me a little bit about your history, your love for elk hunting. I know you do all sorts of other hunting, but it just seems like you and I have a similarity, and we have a true passion for elk.
By far, elk outweighs anything else, whether it be hunting or just being able to get out there and spend time watching and just observing and taking part in what the elk do out there. I absolutely love it. I'm addicted, Jay.
Yeah, and I can tell from watching your videos for years. Let's dive into the aspect of you do a lot of scouting, but you tend to film all your bulls. Do you mind talking a little bit about your background in filming and maybe go into some of the actual camera and gear that you use to capture some of the great quality that you do?
Well, I've enjoyed filming elk for a long time. Probably 20 years ago, gosh, I can't believe it's been that long. But 20 years ago, I bought a video camera specifically for that, just to go out and film. And I just enjoyed being able to get footage and share it with my friends and family. And technology has just exploded to where there's so many different options out there as far as equipment goes. I don't even know where to begin on what kind of equipment I would recommend, but I'll tell you for scouting purposes, it's nice to be able to observe from a distance without really interrupting their daily patterns at all. And with the use of spotting scopes and binoculars, and then being able to attach your cell phone with a little phone scope adapter, that I can't believe how good a quality you can take with utilizing those tools without having to really get in and disturb the elk at all. It's phenomenal what you can do now with that technology.
The digiscoping, you and I both have been digiscoping for, starting out from just holding our cameras up to the spotting scopes to then holding our phones up to the spotting scopes. And now with all of the different adapters, it does make our job quite a bit easier. I think one of the things for me is the transition with, say, being able to video off your phone is with the Instagram and the Facebook and what have you. You can edit your video right there and you're ready to roll on social media if that's what you choose, or you can send the video to your friends, whereas before it seemed like we captured the video, then had to take it, download it to the computer, then you and I remember the days when we were back with the actual tapes, high 8 tapes and all the different stuff, and editing and these days with technology, it's amazing how quickly we can build our portfolio of scouting tools. And I'm kind of like you in that I bought video cameras. They started out great big video cameras and big old cassettes and stuff. But for me, it was just an awesome deal. I could go interact with the elk, video an elk, and it's sometimes even better than shooting an elk because they get to run off, keep bugling, and you get to video them another day. I want to jump into, you had an elk tag, I believe, a couple of years ago, you and a friend, and you actually both harvested bulls over 400 inches. And there's a video that you put out that's, I forget the name, but it's something over 800 inches, or maybe it's just 800 inches. And I thought that was really good. I want to ask you about, Jed, when you had your personal tag, tell me a little bit about how you did your scouting. And I think the listeners, they want to hear how guys like you and guys like me prepare for that hunt. Can you walk me through from, say, the time you drew the tag and what went through your mind and all of the scenarios and strategies you used to scout for your hunt?
Geez. I'll tell you, Jay, the first thing after we came to terms with the fact that we actually drew the tag that we wanted, we started getting a game plan as far as looking at all the maps and figuring out where we wanted to focus our efforts. And we soon realized that there was a ton of area that we wanted to check out. So we decided to go put a bunch of trail cameras out just to figure out where we should focus our efforts on the hunt. And boy, it didn't take long before we realized there were only a couple of areas that we really needed to focus on, and that was the primary benefit of using the trail cameras. We were finding lots of elk throughout the unit, but the bigger bulls and the concentrations of the big bulls were in just a few different locations. So we were able to really quickly identify where to spend our time. And then in addition to that, the trail cameras provided us with a sense of what to expect as far as antler growth that year and what type of bulls we should hold out for. You know, we had lofty goals. I'll be honest, I'd shot a bull that was just shy of 370, so my goal was to up that, so I wanted to shoot a 370 or better bull, and my friend wanted to shoot a 380 or better, and we joked around about shooting 400s, but to keep it real, you know, realistically, we weren't going to pass up a 370 or 380 class bull. We quickly realized, though, through the trail cameras that there were indeed, we came up with about 5 or 6 bulls that we felt were above 390 that we were going to focus our efforts on in that hunt. And without the use of those cameras, we really, I feel like we would have wasted a lot of time in different areas that just flat didn't provide us an opportunity even to harvest a bull like that.
So, Jed, my next question would be, from using trail cameras that year and other years, you found 5 or 6 bulls that you wanted to focus your attention on. It's been my experience that the velvet trail camera pictures that you get don't necessarily equate to where they are hard antlered. In your experience, do those velvet pictures translate to being in the same area hard antlered, or did you find them moving a lot?
Both. I'll be honest with you. I've often wondered, what makes a bull move. The bull that I ended up shooting, we actually, my friend found him in velvet in July, and from where he saw him to where I ended up shooting him was a few hundred yards away. And we saw him 3 or 4 times in between that he was in the exact same area. And that bull, for some reason, never moved. And there was other bulls that I had got trail cam footage of and filmed that rutted in the same place that they grew their horns in. But then there's other bulls, like this bull that we were talking about, that would travel 15 miles from where we got trail camera pictures of them to where they ended up rutting. I would say for the most part, bulls will move, but gosh, you can't. There's definitely not a rule written in stone that says they will.
Yeah, that's interesting. So the big bull that you killed basically was a homebody and stayed right there in that area, and then the bull that your buddy killed moved a long way. So as someone that tries to pattern these animals and try and figure them out, I mean, you basically throw it all out right there because, I've noticed that most of the time they move from where they're in velvet, but then you've got the one case where that big giant stays still. One question I would ask you is, before trail cameras became a big part of our scouting tools, what would be something that in the same situation, if you drew this tag without trail cameras, what would you be doing as kind of your starting point to start scouting?
Wow, without the cameras, well, what I use to determine where to put the cameras, I think is kind of one and the same with what you're asking, and I look for, number one, water sources. You know, depending on the unit, water is always important. Some units more so than others, and then also look at travel patterns. You know, you're gonna quickly find the way the elk will move as far as where the water is and where the thicker, north-facing bedding areas are going to be, and it's not hard to really get in there and find those areas. And I like to get up, when I'm scouting especially, just get up in glass, get in a position where you can see those spots and see what the movement is. Boots on the ground, even getting in and just looking for trails and tracks and droppings. We ruled out a couple areas that year that I had a tag just based on that. We didn't even put cameras up in areas where we had fully intended to because of the lack of sign and use in those areas. So I really think you got to just get out there after you're looking at the maps. Get out there and put your eyes on it and really see what's being used and what's not. You can look for old sign from rut, as far as rub trees, and you'll know when you find the right spot. Man, there's some areas that are just pounded with rubs and trails and beds, and then there's other areas that just have a few. And so you learn real quick where to focus your energies there.
So, Jed, you mentioned something there, and I know the answer to the question, but I think for the sake of our listeners to elaborate a little bit, I think you hit on something that is very key, and that's finding old rubs. Talk to me a little bit as if I'm just starting out. What do those rubs mean, and how does that translate, or how does that make me form an opinion for 1 year later?
Well, it's been my experience, Jay, if you find an area that's got a lot of sign that pertains to the rut, being a bunch of old rubs, those bulls are going to go and rut in the same areas traditionally, providing the moisture's similar to what it was the year before, and the feed is still there. So that's one of the things I always look for is lots of rubs. If you see a lot of rubs in an area, you're pretty much guaranteed there's going to be a lot of rutting activity in that area again. So that's some place that you'll want to be looking for, doing a lot of scouting in that first of September type of time frame. Prior to that, when you're looking at them in velvet, like you were talking about earlier, they're not always going to be in those rutting areas, and they'll be grouped up in bachelor herds, and that's not where you want to be looking, focusing your attention. Summertime, I'm typically just looking for horn growth and trying to see what caliber bulls are out there for that year.
Jed, obviously, the big 6x6 that we're going to talk about that Philip Barrett was fortunate to harvest that you found and followed. Obviously, his horn growth is very good. I want to talk to you in a general term of how are you seeing antler growth in other bulls, and what is your forecast for antler growth for this year in the units that you've been going in?
Jay, man, I would always rely on you for that kind of information. I'm telling you, this bull that we were fortunate enough to take, I've seen a local here in town had one of his sheds from 3 years ago, and then another one picked up his shed from 2 years ago. And I don't believe the sheds from last year have been picked up yet. If so, I haven't heard about them. But the bull put on an enormous amount of mass this year, and I think that's a sign of what we can expect with all the moisture that we've received. There's obviously going to be some extra length as well and some extra points, but the mass difference from this year to years past is just phenomenal on this bull. And it was hard when I first laid eyes on him this year, and I was filming him. I was so excited. I zoomed in real tight on the video, and he looked great. Don't get me wrong, but at the same time, I'm looking at him just thinking, man, I thought he should look bigger than he does when I'm looking at the video, because I'm watching with binoculars as I'm filming. And once I backed off the zoom and got a little perspective on how he was in relation to other elk and the terrain, the trees, and what have you, then you could really appreciate the overall size and mass. But he was so massive, we were underscoring every point by a few inches because of how massive he was. And we had previous year's sheds to go off of as far as anticipating his mass and measurements, and he just blew them out of the water with the difference in mass from this year.
Yeah, and I think, Jed, you can attest to in a lot of animals, coos deer, sheep, mule deer, elk, when you've got an animal that has more mass than normal and a real heavy animal, in my opinion, a lot of times it can hide length. It can make your points look shorter. It can make your main beams look shorter. And mass hides length. So
Absolutely.
I think, it's one of those things. I just did a couple of episodes on field judging elk, and I think we briefly touched on it. But people need to understand that when you're dealing with an extra heavy, and it doesn't really matter what it is, sheep, elk, deer, when they're extra heavy, they don't look as long. So you have to take that into account. Jed, I want to take a quick break here to hear from our sponsors, and we'll get right back here to you, and we'll want to talk about the big bull.
Sounds good.
Guys, GoHunt.com Insider is giving away 4 hunts in the month of July alone. They've already given away an antelope tag, an elk tag, a mule deer tag, and the final hunt that they're giving away the last week of July is a Utah North Cache any legal weapon elk tag. So that's a retail value of $7,000, a hunt dates of September 12th through the 20th, 2015. With the season dates during the rut and the bulls in the 280 to 350 range, this is an incredible opportunity for any elk hunter. The North Cache unit has a great bull to cow ratio and gives hunters the chance to harvest an elk during the peak of the rut. So they've already given 3 hunts away this month. This elk hunt is a great opportunity here for a Go Hunt Insider member to win the hunt, and all you have to do is be an Insider member. Each Insider member gets a ticket in the bucket, so to speak, and so anybody has the opportunity to win a hunt. So go to GoHunt.com Insider and join. Press the blue Join Now button. Use the promo code JScott, and you'll receive a $50 KUIU gift card. Okay, Jed, so this big bull, you first saw him, I believe, the year that you had a tag. What did you estimate? I believe I saw a video that you had taken of this bull. What did you figure the bull was when you had videoed him the year you had the tag?
The video that you probably saw was shot by my friend Scott South, and it was interesting because I had trail cam pictures of this bull for about a month and a half prior to him filming him. And when he saw him, he was able to film and send me the video, and we were in amazement at how he had finished out, because the last time I had seen him, his kicker on his left side had just grown out probably 4 or 5 inches, and his fores and main beam were just splitting apart. So Now,
Jed, just to be clear, are we talking about your bull here or the governor's tag bull?
This is the bull that ended up being the governor's tag bull.
Okay.
And so we knew he was going to be a big bull off the trail cam pics. And then when Scott filmed him, we just about fell over. There was no doubt it was the same bull, but he had blown up on the top end. Great big swords and fifths. And at that time, that was the first week of July, and we were putting him in that high 90 to low 400 range. When they get that big, it's hard to assign a number to him, but he was no doubt going to be a shooter for that year. And I'll tell you, last year we looked for him and could not find him. And even on the year that Scott filmed him, the bull was so hard to keep track of. From where I had trail camera pictures of him to where he had filmed him that first week of July, he had already moved about 3 miles. And I went back to that canyon to find that bull and get some more footage of him. And I looked and looked. I literally spent almost 15 days looking for that bull and could not find him again after that footage. So he was kind of like the ghost bull, And so when we found him this year, I was actually out camping with my wife looking for him, and when I found him, I just couldn't believe it was him. And so we quickly tried to talk the old Philip Barrett into coming to shoot him, and with his schedule, he couldn't get away for several days, and I was scared to death we were going to lose him because of his history. The bull just would not stay put. He was constantly bouncing around, and so we felt very, very fortunate to be able to keep tabs on him long enough for Philip to be able to come in and put a hunt on him.
Jed, while you were watching him and staying on him, was he with other bulls, or was he notoriously by himself, and what was his pattern, not only this year, but in the times that you'd seen him before, in the velvet, in the summer? Was he bachelored up, or was he a loner?
He was really more of a wanderer, Jay. He'd be with different bulls, but they were always different bulls. You would never see him with the same bull more than a day or so. When we were watching him, we got to watch him for 5 days, and the first days with a small little rag 6. Second day, another couple bulls joined up with him. Third day, he went off by himself. Fourth day, he was with 15 bulls. The day we killed him, he was all by himself again. He really just kind of did his own thing. The other bulls would go to some of the same areas he was in, but I don't feel like he was really with those bulls. I think he was on his own, just moving around.
Jed, what was he feeding on? And the question would be, how much was he completely visible to you, and how much where he would be in the brush and be gone, and then you'd have to wait him out for that evening? I'm more curious from a tactical standpoint of scouting of how visible was he, and pattern, and what was he doing? Would he lay down at first light, or was he always feeding? Tell me what he was doing.
Well, the first day, I'll be honest, he flat blew me away. He stayed out in the wide open feeding until about 10:30 in the morning. Very visible. I burned hours and hours of footage of him, and he walked right up into the bedding area, and I lost track of him in the beds. But he walked right back out early that afternoon and fed out in the open again until dark. Second day, it was more of the same. He got into his bedding area about 8:30 that morning, and then I didn't see him again until just before dark. But we had good rains both those days. The next day, we didn't have any rain, and he stayed in the cover a little bit longer. He went to bed a little bit earlier. He did get up midday and fed around in the open for a little bit and then rebedded. And then the fourth day, they were in the trees right at daybreak, and we didn't see much elk movement at all the fourth day, and it was the second day without any rain, too. And I think they were just in those bottoms getting some water, and it changed their patterns a little bit. And again, on the fifth day, there was very little elk movement at all until he popped up about a half hour after daylight, and we were able to locate him all by himself again, just walking, not even feeding. So his patterns varied, and I really think the weather played a big part in it. When it was so overcast and wet, and he wasn't feeling any pressure, he was very comfortable out there just feeding for a long time.
That's awesome. Well, I want to congratulate you on all of the success and getting a great bull like that, and the money that the auction tags provide for the state of Arizona. There are critics of the auction tag system, and I'm just going to flat out say there is no other way to provide the amount of resources that those tags provide for our state. And the people that want to critique the tags, if they want to start writing checks, then they have the ability to critique. But our animals need it, our habitat needs it, and there's so many good projects that money goes to. I'm a big proponent of those tags, mainly because I don't see any other way that we can raise that kind of money. So I want to congratulate you on being steadfast and staying on that bull, and it's a beautiful, beautiful, typical bull. I can't wait to see it in person one of these days, and congrats to A3's Hunter and your Hunter. You guys did an awesome job. I want to shift focus a little bit here because I know you guide in a lot of different units. I guess, first of all, I would ask you, what are some of your favorite units? And maybe tell me a little bit about where you will be hunting or where you will be guiding this year, in which units.
Jay, primarily I live in Lakeside and I hunt units 1, 3C, and 23. And I would say my favorite unit by far is Unit 1. Number one, because it's close, and number two, it's such a wet unit. There's always great rutting activity, and there's such a great amount of elk there. It's a good time every single time I go there. It's always nice and cool, and just tons and tons of elk. It's by far my favorite. This year, gosh, I'm going to be hunting all three of those units this year for elk and deer alike. Hopefully I would love to top the bull that we just shot, but man, I know it's going to be a great hunting season. We're going to have a lot of great opportunities at some big bulls this year.
So in talking about the big bulls that you know are out there, I mean, compare this year to another year, or just tell me, do you feel like the elk antlers are at a 100% maximum capacity?
I wouldn't say they're at 100%. I think it's going to be a fabulous year. I don't think it'll be the best year ever. I like you, like to follow weather patterns. I look at old Craig Steele's information. He does so much research on that, and I think he's got some good hard data to support it. It's going to be a fabulous year. And I'd be tickled if I had a tag this year myself, but I don't know if I would go as far as to say it's going to be the best year ever. If we had a few years in a row like this, then I think you might be able to inch more towards that type of statement. But as it is, it's going to be a phenomenal year for elk. Not just their antler growth, but man, the rut. They're so healthy right now, and it's going to be a great year for the rut, and the whole experience is going to be excellent this year.
Would you say, in your opinion, Unit 1, 3C, and 23, those three units that you like, is there one that looks better than the other compared to how they look year over year, or do all three of them look very, very good?
I'll say both Units 1 and 23 are looking a little better to me than 3C. 3C's got some great bulls in it, but it's been on a downward trend, it seems like, for several years, and it's stabilized, but definitely I've seen more quality bulls in 23 and 1 than I have in 3C. And boy, I'll tell you, 23, there's a lot of extras popping out this year with all the increased moisture. I can't tell you how many bulls we've seen with extra eye guards and extra crown points coming off the base of the fours over there. Unit 1, if we could get the age class up in Unit 1, I think it'd be a phenomenal unit as well. And I think that's the advantage Unit 23 has over 1 is they get those older bulls that are able to produce, just bigger horns based on their age. Unit 1's got a few of those, but the ones that are up there in Unit 1, golly, they're putting on some great antler growth. If they give them a few more years to grow up, you'd be seeing a ton of giants coming out of Unit 1.
Don't you think, Jed, with the amount of tags that they've been piling in Unit 1, I believe they dropped it from 350 on the archery to 300. You could correct me if I'm wrong, but then the rifle tag numbers were very high, and quite honestly, if they would be, a third lower on all of them, it would probably be the best elk unit in the state.
I absolutely agree, Jay. Since I was a little kid, there was 150 archery bull tags in Unit 1, and it stayed that way until, ironically, the year of the fire. Even before the fire happened, it allocated, I want to say it was 225 or 250 permits for that year, and then after that it jumped up to 350. But with all the growth that's there, man, if they had moved that back to 150, I don't think there's any unit that could contend with it. It's been just phenomenal since the burn, and getting nothing but better. Unfortunately, there's just a lot of tags and a lot of people shooting great bulls out of there, but man, a lot of those bulls don't ever get a chance to reach their full potential.
Yeah, for sure. Genetically, I think it's a great unit. It seems like Unit 1, the elk antlers are a thicker, kind of heavier, based bull and dark antlered. I love those dark antlers in Unit 1.
Yeah, for sure.
So, Jed, I want to talk to you a little bit about equipment, since you're really into archery and very knowledgeable. Fixed blade or mechanical?
That's
why?
The old debate. The couple things that I think need to be established first is who the person shooting them is and what their equipment is. Because mechanicals do take away a little bit of energy when it comes to opening up and pushing through the hide. And so, when I talk in generalities, I'm talking about an adult male shooting a 60 to 70 pound modern bow, something built in the last 5 to 10 years. And in that regard, I always steer people to fixed blade first, just for the durability of the broadhead. If you can get a fixed blade to fly, I think that's your best option. Outside of that, if you're having problems with the fixed blade flying well, I would steer you to a mechanical. I truly think that a mechanical that's going to fly and hit where you're aiming would be better than a fixed blade that's going to give you some erratic flight and not hit where you're aiming. And there's some quality mechanical blade broadheads out there now that offer a number of different options. You don't have to go with the real big wide cut diameter. It's going to inhibit penetration. There's some rather compact mechanical blade broadheads that do a phenomenal job. But again, I would first try to get a fixed blade broadhead to fly well. And there's a few simple tricks that people overlook. Number one, putting a good hard helical on your fletchings will help a ton when it comes to flying a broadhead. A lot of your pre-fletched arrows from the factory, they all come straight fletch, and that's not spinning your arrow enough. So when it comes to shooting a broadhead, you're going to have a hard time getting good broadhead flight. So just doing a simple thing like getting them refletched with a good hard helical will help. And then obviously getting your bow tuned, going with a drop-away arrow rest where you have minimal contact on your arrow, that's going to help you get good broadhead flight as well. When it comes to women and kids shooting lower poundage, I don't see any reason for them to go to a mechanical. Most of those setups, they're shooting lower speeds, and it's a lot easier to control a broadhead at those lower speeds. And so you can put a good hard helical on there and screw on a number of good mechanical broadheads, and you should have no problem getting them to fly good.
Jed, are you a proponent of the shorter vanes or the longer vanes?
I would say I've done more of the short profile vanes lately. They have a pretty high profile, though, so your surface area is still significant. And when you get that much surface area with a good hard helical, I really haven't had any problem getting fixed blade broadheads to fly with that type of setup. People originally were using longer vanes and just not having much helical on them, and so you didn't have as much control. Going with the short vane and a good hard helical, not only does it give you that good control, but it puts less weight in the back of your arrow, so you get more front of center balance, which is always good for shooting broadheads and longer range shooting as well.
If you had to name a handful of fixed blade broadheads that you've had good success and your buddies have had good success flying, can you name some of them? And then as well as the mechanicals, in your opinion, name some that you feel if someone were to be starting out that they could immediately try and be a little bit ahead of the curve.
Absolutely. I'll say my favorite on the fixed blade is the Montec, the G5 Montec. Simply because of the simplicity involved. There's no parts to it. It's all one piece. You can go out and shoot the broadhead, and when it comes to straightening it or sharpening it, it's very simple on a flat stone. It takes 2 minutes. You can sharpen it up and go out there and use it again. Another great fixed blade, probably the best when it comes to just screwing on your arrow and shooting, is the Slick Trick. They make a number of different variations, but the regular old Slick Tricks are awesome. You can just screw them on your arrow and go, and they shoot really well compared to your field tips. Another good one that gets overlooked a lot is the Wacom. It's a small profile, replaceable blade, fixed blade broadhead that shoots really well. When it comes to mechanicals, gosh, there's a number of different ones out there. I think Rusty Ulmer created a great one. He took some concepts from several different ones out there and integrated them with some of his own ideas and came out with that Ulmer Edge. That's a great mechanical broadhead. There's some benefits to its design as far as its practice design that it has built into it, as well as the sharpened inside edges of the blades for when it's coming out, it's cutting as well. Flies very true to a field tip. Also, the Rage. There's a couple models of Rage. The new hypodermics are a very, very strong, well-made mechanical blade broadhead that fly very well. And even there's a local here that makes one that's kind of a hybrid that's got some fixed blades and some mechanicals. It's No Limits Archery, and he's got some great broadheads that fly really well in addition to the ones I just mentioned.
Well, that's great. Yeah, I hadn't heard of those No Limits. Where can people find those?
The model that he has, No Limits is the name of the company. It's the Gravedigger Broadhead.
Oh, okay.
They're very popular here locally. Most stores will carry them.
I think Brian Rimzo, when I was hunting with him, not last year but the year before on his archery bighorn, Rocky Mountain bighorn hunt, I believe he used a Gravedigger, but I'm not 100% sure.
Yeah, they're a great broadhead.
Awesome. Jed, when it comes to actually hunting yourself and guiding for elk, calling or stalking?
Calling is so much fun, but on big bulls, I would say your general rule of thumb is stalking and being as quiet as you can is your best way to hunt the big bulls. And again, there's no set in stone statement. You can't say that's always the case, because on Ian's 420 bull, that bull came running to a cow call, just flat ran right on into it, which is unusual for a big mature bull. But man, you catch them at the right time, and they just can't resist it. But it's definitely been my experience stalking versus calling.
Jed, being out in the woods as much as you are, if you had to point out and say what you hear people making mistakes with their calling, give me some examples of mistakes that you hear a lot with people and their calling. Definitely
calling too much. And there's times, I'll be honest, Jay, there's times I'll flat call like a maniac, but it's got to be the right situation. And I think a lot of times people get out there and they hear a bull and they get in relatively close and just start calling and calling and calling and calling, or they call as they're approaching. And there's definitely a time and place for everything. And I think the less calling you do, the better. You only call as much as you have to call. And so if a bull's coming in and he's responding to your calls, man, just call as little as possible, because they really can pinpoint exactly where that calling is coming from. And so the less you do, it seems like the more interested they get, and the less they can actually pinpoint exactly where you are.
Jed, from a tactical standpoint, archery hunting with the bow in your hand, talk to me about when a bull is coming in, say he's committed to the call and he's coming. What are the things that are going through your mind? What are you doing physically? What are you doing mentally as that bull's approaching? And let's say that you have no idea. He's just bugling and he's coming. What's going through your brain?
The very first thing I'm thinking about, Jay, is the wind, because they always get the wind to their favor, and they try to use it to figure out what's going on. So I'll either set myself or the hunter up to where I can get them in a position where I can pull the bull past them without them getting winded. And 9 times out of 10, if you can keep that wind in your favor in those situations, you're going to have an opportunity for a shot.
And then as a hunter yourself, so the bow is in your hand, the bull is approaching. what is going through your mind from a field judging standpoint, from a tactical, I'm going to shoot this bull standpoint? Walk me through a little bit of your mental process as things are happening.
When I've got the bow in my hand for myself, I've done enough scouting to where I've got a few specific bulls that I'm looking for. So first thing I'll do is if I can identify the bull as one that I'm familiar with, I instantly know if it's one I'm going to shoot or not. We don't know every bull out there, obviously, so depending again on the unit and what the characteristics are for the unit, I'll look for those characteristics. So if let's say I'm hunting in Unit 23, which is notorious for having good bottoms, but their fifths seem to lack over there. And if you find one of the big fifths, he's probably going to be a shooter. So over there, I'm going to be looking for his tops and see how good his fifths are, because typically their fronts are really good. Over in Unit 1, it's just the opposite. A lot of bulls have really good tops, but they'll have real weak fronts. So in Unit 1, I'm looking for better than average fronts and some good thirds. It seems like they're either great big or really little in Unit 1 when it comes to the thirds. So I look for those key characteristics on their antlers to know if it's going to be a shooter or not, as far as needing to make a quick decision.
Okay, and then so let's say he's 70 yards. You've determined that he is a shooter. Tactically, as he's coming, what are you doing? Are you putting, your release is on your string? Walk me through all the way through drawing back. What are you waiting for? When are you shooting? What are you doing with your breathing? Talk to me a little bit about that.
Boy, I'll tell you, I lose control, Jay. I get excited.
You do too? I'm glad to hear you do too.
It's easy to talk about it, but ideally, one of the biggest mistakes I see made, and I'm a victim of it as well, is just get caught up watching instead of hunting. And so you've got to go into that mode. Once you determine it's one you're going to shoot, you need to look for an opportunity to draw. And too many times people wait too long to draw. I think you can get away with it on elk sometimes. They can catch the movement and stop and run a little and stop. But to do it the best, if you can get a chance to draw back when they're walking behind a tree and just wait, you'll be way ahead of schedule there, and you'll have an opportunity more often than not. That's the biggest thing, is I like just being able to draw without being detected. Elk are unlike deer. They're actually very tolerant of so many things that you can stop them, and even if they see you drawing, a lot of times they'll stop and look at you, and if you hold still, they'll give you an opportunity to shoot. But you do need to be ready. That's the biggest thing. You get your release on and get drawn as soon as they get within your shooting range. If your max shooting distance is 50 yards, as soon as they get close to 50 yards, you need to be drawing back so you're ready to take a shot when it presents itself.
I think that's great advice. And then do you do anything specific in your practice when you're shooting every day? And how does that translate into making a good shot when it comes down to shooting at an animal? Talk to me a little bit about your preparation and trying to take that. It's like a golfer hitting range balls on the range. There's guys that practice correctly, and then there's guys that don't, and it seems like the guys that practice correctly can take that game to the course. How do you see that being the same with archery? And tell me a little bit how you practice and how you execute. And granted, we're all human and we're all going to make mistakes, but from someone that's shot a lot of stuff and is a very accomplished archer, I'm kind of looking for that inner, what makes you tick of being a good shot, not only on a target but at an animal.
Jay, that there's no substitute for practice. Bottom line, the more arrows you shoot, the more mechanical it becomes, the more subconsciously you do everything correct. When you get into those moments like we were talking about, when you just lose control, and you're not thinking, if you've put in the time to practice a lot, all that muscle memory is there and everything just happens the way it's supposed to. I had a hunter just last year that, gosh, in camp, he could shoot great, out to 50, 60 yards. But, man, out hunting, as soon as a bull came within range, he would be jello, and he wouldn't think. He'd be gripping the bow hard. He'd be punching the trigger, and he was a whole different animal out there when we were hunting. And I think that boils down to just practice. You just flat need to practice a bunch, get that muscle memory up there. And shooting 3D tournaments is a great way to do it because you're number one, you're having to judge the distance. Number two, you're having to pick out a specific spot on the animal. You're not just shooting the animal, you're shooting for a specific spot. And number three, you get some pressure. And it's nice to be able to shoot under pressure because you do behave differently and you'll shoot differently when you're shooting under pressure. And hunting, that's what it is. You get a big animal in front of you and you feel the pressure big time. So being able to shoot 3D tournaments, I think, will definitely help you out in the hunting arena.
That's great advice there, Jed. Well, I want to thank you. This has been a great episode. I want to thank you for coming on, and I want to congratulate you again on your success and all the success you've had for many, many years. And I look forward to seeing how you do this fall. I know you're going to do great. I want to give you a chance to let the listeners know where they could follow your stuff and contact you if they want to contact you.
Oh, thank you, Jay. I enjoy listening to all your podcasts and watching your videos forever. So it's an honor to just be able to be speaking to you. I upload tons of video to my YouTube channel. It's just Jed Larson on YouTube. I started working with Jay Loatman and Chad Roten over at A3 Outfitters or A3 Trophy Hunts this year, and they've got a great Instagram and YouTube address as well. And you'll be seeing a lot of video. We've got hours and hours of footage of the Big Six that we shot just a few days ago that we'll be uploading as well. But always lots of good content on there. Even if it's not kill shots, man, we're just putting lots of elk and antelope and deer content on there. So lots of fun stuff just to go look at to get yourself in the mood.
That's awesome. Jed, one last question. Did you have a particular nickname for this 6x6? And if so, what was it?
It's changed a few times.
From Houdini to Ghost to...
I'll tell you, there's so many... I shouldn't say so. There's a few different hunters that have been on this bull, great hunters, and that just goes to show how elusive the bull was. We've called him Wilbur, we've called him Frank the Tank, and we've called him McLovin. I think McLovin is the one that's stuck. I think that's what we're going to roll with. Just nothing about him that we didn't love. Everything on him was awesome, but I think that's the name that we're going to roll with this time around.
That's great, Jed. That's great stuff. Well, thanks for being on. I look forward to seeing you sometime this fall. Seems like we always end up bumping into each other somewhere, and I appreciate all the great work that you've been doing with your videos, and I look forward to seeing some more. And so until I see you next time, buddy, God bless you, okay?
Hey, thanks. You too, Jay. Have a great one.
All right, take care.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to the J. Scott Outdoors Western Big Game Hunting and Fishing Podcast, brought to you by GoHunt.com Insider. Use the promo code JScott and receive a $50 KUIU gift card when signing up for the GoHunt.com Insider. Research faster, hunt more. Go to GoHunt.com/insider and join today.